Why did the CIA intentionally design the fastest spy plane in history to leak highly flammable fuel all over the runway right before takeoff? Let me explain. When you look at old footage of the SR-71 Blackbird sitting on the tarmac, there are literally puddles of fuel dripping from its wings. Most people think this was a mechanical failure or poor maintenance, but it was actually a stroke of absolute genius. You see, the Blackbird flies at Mach 3.2, which is over 2,000 miles per hour. At that speed, the friction from the air rubbing against the aircraft heats the outer skin to over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. If the engineers built the fuel tanks to fit perfectly on the ground, the intense heat during flight would cause the metal to expand and snap the entire plane in half. So, they built the titanium panels with massive gaps between them. On the ground, it leaked like a sieve. But once it hit supersonic speeds, the extreme heat caused the metal panels to expand and seal completely shut. But this design created a massive, deadly problem that almost stopped the entire project. The only metal on Earth capable of withstanding those temperatures was titanium. But here's the crazy part. During the Cold War, the United States didn't have enough titanium to build a fleet of these jets. The only country with massive, high-quality reserves of titanium was the Soviet Union, the exact enemy the SR-71 was being built to spy on. So, how did the CIA get it? They set up a network of fake shell companies all around the world, pretending to buy titanium for pizza ovens and civilian manufacturing. The Soviet Union unknowingly sold the United States the exact metal needed to build the spy planes that would fly right over Moscow. And this strategy of using bizarre engineering to solve impossible physics didn't stop in the Cold War. Fast forward to today, and look at the F-22 Raptor. Why is it that a modern $150 million fighter jet has no visible weapons? When you see an older jet like an F-16, it has missiles hanging off the wings for everyone to see. Most people assume the F-22 just isn't heavily armed, but the truth is far more dangerous. You see, weapons hanging on the outside of a plane act like giant mirrors for enemy radar. They bounce radar waves right back, giving away the jet's position instantly. To make the Raptor completely invisible, engineers hid all the missiles inside internal weapon base. When it's time to fire, the doors snap open in less than a second, launch the missile, and slam shut before enemy radar can even register that something changed. The jet literally fires out of thin air. But sometimes, the weapon is so massive that hiding it is impossible. Enter the A-10 Warthog. Have you ever noticed that the front landing gear of the A-10 is pushed completely to the right side, making the plane look crooked? Let me explain. The military didn't build a plane and then put a gun on it. They built a massive, 19-foot-long, 4,000-pound Gatling gun, and then designed a plane to carry it. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon is so enormous that it takes up the entire center of the aircraft. Because the firing barrel of the gun has to be perfectly aligned with the exact center line of the plane to stop the massive recoil from throwing the jet off course, the front landing gear simply couldn't fit in the middle. So, engineers just shoved the wheels off to the side. If they hadn't, the force of firing 65 rounds a second would literally push the plane backward out of the sky. And speaking of bizarre fixes, why does the military use tape to hold together a $2 billion B-2 stealth bomber? You see, the B-2 Spirit is the most advanced bomber ever created, designed to fly deep into enemy territory, completely undetected. Its smooth, bat-like shape is designed to deflect radar waves. But there is a massive flaw. Every single time a panel is opened for maintenance, or a screw is removed, it creates a tiny microscopic seam in the stealth coating. A crack the size of a human hair can catch a radar wave and give away the bomber's position, getting the crew killed. So, how do they fix it? Maintainers use a highly classified, specialized radar-absorbing tape to meticulously seal every single panel gap, screw hole, and seam before flight. They literally tape the bomber together. If the tape peels off during a high-speed flight, the plane suddenly lights up on enemy screens like a Christmas tree. Why does a single flight helmet for the F-35 fighter jet cost $400,000? Let me explain. When you look at an older fighter jet, the pilot relies on dozens of tiny screens and dials in the cockpit to see what's happening. But the F-35 completely eliminated that. Most people think a helmet is just a piece of Kevlar to protect the pilot's head. But this helmet is actually an incredibly advanced computer wired directly into the pilot's brain and the plane's nervous system. You see, the F-35 has 6 infrared cameras mounted on the outside of its fuselage. When the pilot looks down at the floor of the plane, they don't see their boots. The cameras feed a live, real-time image directly into the helmet's visor, allowing the pilot to look completely through the solid metal floor of the jet, as if the plane was made of invisible glass. On top of that, if the pilot looks at an enemy jet, They can simply blink to lock onto a target without ever touching a button. And speaking of massive engineering, why does the US military's largest cargo plane physically kneel down like an elephant? The C-5 Galaxy is so enormous that you could fly an entire helicopter inside of it. But there was a massive problem during its design. When the plane was parked on the runway, the cargo deck was so high up in the air that trucks and tanks couldn't easily drive up the ramp. Instead of building massive, expensive ramps at every single airport in the world, engineers did something insane. They designed the 28-wheel landing gear to completely deflate and compress on command. When it's time to load cargo, the entire 800,000-pound aircraft drops its belly closer to the concrete, kneeling down to ground level. This allows Abrams tanks and heavy artillery to just drive straight through the front nose of the plane, completely eliminating the need for expensive loading equipment. But what happens when you go deep underwater? Why do multi-billion-dollar nuclear submarines have absolutely zero windows? When you look at civilian research subs or deep-sea explorers, they always have thick glass domes for the crew to see out of. Most people think that the military just relies entirely on sonar because the ocean is dark. But there's a much more terrifying reason. You see, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine dives to classified depths of over 800 feet. At that level, the water pressure is so immense that it is actively trying to crush the metal hull of the sub inward. If engineers installed even a single tiny window, the pressure difference would exploit the seam between the glass and the steel. At extreme depths, a microscopic failure wouldn't just cause a leak. The water would shoot through the glass with the force of a high-powered water jet cutter, instantly slicing right through steel panels, and anyone standing in the room before crushing the entire submarine like an empty soda can in milliseconds.